Yay, okay, I'm live. So we're back at this osteoarthritis book. I'm on page 28, part 1, impact and causes of osteoarthritis. I'm trying to shout so you can hear me clearly. The genes in cartilage cells code for the proteins that are used to build collagen and the cartilage framework. The genes are the basic units of the master plan called the DNA, which contains the genetic information needed to create a human being. These cartilage cell genes are a major topic of this book. They are very sensitive to environmental signals such as the food we eat, the air we breathe, and other environmental conditions we come in contact with. When we eat the wrong types of foods, genes become activated in cells that code for proteins that break down the surrounding cartilage. Some of the genes are called suicide genes. They will be discussed in chapter 8. In osteoarthritis, the cartilage that cushions our joints deteriorates. As it breaks down, the joint surface becomes irregular, does not glide smoothly. This causes the joint to become painful and swollen during movement, resulting in the typical stiffness and swelling seen in arthritis. When the cartilage is destroyed completely, a condition develops in which the two adjoining bones that make up the joint start grinding together, commonly referred to as bone on bone. This is very painful because bone, unlike cartilage, has many nerve endings and is able to perceive this abnormal contact. By this stage, however, it is too late to reverse the process that set the whole deterioration in motion. Through proper nutrition and the use of key supplements and other nutrients, we can help preserve our joints and prevent the deterioration from occurring in the first place. Cartilage is a complex three-dimensional structure made up of cartilage cells, water, aggrecan, and collagen proteins. Proteoglycans form the basic subunits of cartilage that bind to and interact with collagen to form the 3D cushion of our joints. Collagen is not only found in cartilage, it is present in many other places, including ears, nose, and blood vessels. It is an important component of the structure of the body. It is a unique structure in that it does not have the ability to effectively clear waste and ward off disease. Cartilage is bathed in a fluid called synovial fluid, which delivers most of the nutrients to the cartilage cells. This is because cartilage does not have good blood flow, which is necessary to bring in oxygen and nutrients. It also has poor lymphatic flow, which makes it inefficient in removing waste products that can accumulate in the cells. These characteristics create a perfect environment for the accumulation of toxins. Aggrecan is a major protein component of the cartilage framework, whose normal function is critical to cartilage's ability to withstand the load of daily activities. Joints also contain fat, which is an important actor in osteoarthritis and will be explained more in chapter 10. Anatomy of the cartilage cell. The cartilage cell is no different than heart cells, stomach cells, or any other cells in the body. A cell is a basic unit of life surrounded by the wall called the cell membrane, which separates it from the outside environment. Inside the cartilage cell, all the instructions needed to build a human being are found in the DNA, which is located in the central compartment of the cell called the nucleus. While every cell in the body has all the DNA needed to build a whole person, only a certain portion of the DNA is active in a given cell, depending on what type of cell it is. These DNA instructions are coded for by an individual sections of the DNA called genes. Each gene codes for a unique protein, such as collagen, that forms the framework of cartilage. The part of this cell outside the nucleus called the cytoplasm contains the chemical factories that decode the messages sent by the genes to form the proteins necessary to sustain life. These chemical factories are called the mitochondria, play a major role in the development of osteoarthritis. The mitochondria take the nutrients that are absorbed by the cells from the bloodstream and use them to generate a unique substance known as adenosine triphosphate, ATP. All the food one eats is ultimately converted to ATP, which the chemical cells use to power all their activities and to grow and regenerate. ATP acts as the energy currency of the cell in the same way that money is the currency used to conduct our daily business affairs. In the process of creating energy from food, mitochondria create a byproduct known as oxygen-free radicals, cell smog, he puts in parentheses. I think one of the virtues of this book is he's good at using metaphors to explain sciencey things to regular people. This is analogous to the smog that comes out of the tailpipe of a car as gasoline is burned to move the car. These oxygen-free radicals damage cartilage cells if they are allowed to accumulate. The body has unique chemical pathways to process and neutralize this cell smog, which includes the compound nitric oxide. But when one's nutrition is poor, these chemical detoxifying pathways do not work properly, leading to the accumulation of toxic smog inside the cell. This is deadly for the cell. Its own waste products accumulate, poisoning and eventually killing it. In osteoarthritis, toxic waste products accumulate in cartilage cells, leading to the destruction of our cartilage. This occurs because the wrong types of genes are turned on in arthritic cartilage. The research outlined in this book points to poor nutrition as an important cause of this malfunction of the cartilage cell. It also points to the nutritional strategies as important tools for the treatment and prevention of osteoarthritis. Proper nutrition optimizes the function of the mitochondria, keeps the right genes turned on, and prevents the accumulation of toxic oxygen-free radicals in our cartilage cells. Page 31, cartilage is uniquely susceptible to damage by environmental toxins and poor diets. The cartilage found in our joints is a unique organ in that it lacks the normal blood flow, the rich nerve endings, and the lymphatic flow that is found in most of our organs. This means that cartilage is slow to heal when damaged because inadequate blood flow does not bring nutrients or other reinforcements necessary to rebuild and regenerate. The lymphatic system filters waste and carries it away to be disposed of by the kidneys or colon. Because cartilage has poor lymphatic flow, it is prone to accumulating waste products and other toxins that circulate in the bloodstream. The toxins are stored in cartilage, and because of its poor nerve supply, extensive damage can occur in cartilage without any symptoms of pain and dysfunction. This is a dangerous set of circumstances. Wow. Okay, these toxins are stored in the cartilage, and because of its poor nerve supply, extensive damage can occur in cartilage without any symptoms of pain and dysfunction. Okay, this is a dangerous set of circumstances that leads to the late detection of osteoarthritis by both patients and their doctors. These chemical characteristics of cartilage make it ideal for the development of degenerative disease such as osteoarthritis. The body's hormonal state also has a direct effect on joint health. Our nutritional state, hormonal state, and overall health are connected at the chemical level. If we eat foods high in toxic trans fats, saturated fats, and sugar and white flour, as well as other unhealthy chemicals, our hormones produced by such organs as our thyroid glands start to malfunction. Hormones produce chemical signals that influence the proper functioning of cartilage cells and many other cells in the body. For example, when large amounts of unhealthy saturated and trans fats are consumed, cells start producing increased amounts of unhealthy compounds called prostaglandins. Okay. There are good and bad prostaglandins, but unhealthy diets overproduce the bad ones. Prostaglandins are the chemical compounds responsible for increasing inflammation in the body. When these prostaglandins are formed excessively, they contribute to an unhealthy joint environment, which leads to cartilage breakdown in osteoarthritis. These unhealthy prostaglandins are overproduced by the fat cells in the oversized waists, abdominal obesity of obese people. These cell-derived inflammatory chemicals go on to break down cartilage. Okay, so we have a chart here. Let's see. Inflammatory and degrading cycle of osteoarthritic osteoarthritic cartilage breakdown. So we go from hormonal imbalance, inflammatory products, oxygen-free radicals, and sugar-coated toxins, which that's the advanced glycation endpoints. The sugar coating is glycation. Send the signal to the cartilage cell. Signal is transferred to the nucleus where the DNA is present. Cell produces inflammatory prostaglandins, cartilage breakdown enzymes, and nitric oxide. So there you go. All right. Okay. Our genes interact with the environment around us, and they are highly adaptable to the surrounding environment of each person. In osteoarthritis, certain genes are turned off and others become overactive, leading to the development of the disease. New research has shown that diet can control the expression of genes. An unhealthy diet can trigger genes that break down cartilage and lead to the development of osteoarthritis. Nutrition is very powerful in determining which genes are turned on and how they function. Each individual has a unique genetic makeup. It is interesting to note that the DNA makeup of human beings is 99.99% identical. It is the 0.01% difference that is important in coding for the individual characteristics that make each of us unique from one another. This 0.01% difference in our genes is what gives each individual a predisposition to certain diseases. Our genetic predisposition for disease, such as the development of osteoarthritis, runs in our family. What is important to realize, though, is that this predisposition is not etched in stone. We are not destined to always develop the same diseases our parents and grandparents had. Our environment, including the food we eat and the chemicals we come in contact with, influences the expression of those genes. Cartilage cell genes code for 3 important substances involved in the development of osteoarthritis. For there is the production of cytokines, which are chemical messengers that influence which genes are turned on. Second, cartilage produces cytokines. Second, cartilage produces proteases, which are proteins that break down and remove old cartilage as it becomes damaged over time. This is the part of the body's normal housekeeping. But in the case of osteoarthritis, proteases are overproduced and damage healthy cartilage. As noted earlier, DNA is made of short segments called genes. Each gene codes for a specific protein that has a distinct function in the cell. Proteases are normally produced in small amounts and function to break down old, worn-out cartilage as it is replaced by new cartilage. As we know, the body constantly replenishes our tissues with new ones. For instance, old skin flakes off and new skin forms. In this way, the body constantly regenerates itself. The problem in osteoarthritis is that these breakdown processes overwhelm the rebuilding processes. Cartilage is broken down more quickly than the body is able to make new cartilage, resulting in an overall negative balance in the amount of cartilage remaining in the development of osteoarthritis. This occurs because increased oxidative damage and free radical production turns on genes that overproduce the proteases that break down cartilage. Thus the whole delicate balance of new cartilage production and old cartilage removal is disrupted. Proteases are part of a class of compounds in the body known as enzymes. An enzyme is a protein coded for by a single gene that carries out some important chemical reaction in the cell. A third very important substance is nitric oxide, a toxic agent for our joints that accumulates in joint cartilage as a result of poor nutrition. These three chemicals, cytokines, proteases, and NO, nitric oxide, are at the heart of the development of osteoarthritis. Okay, so let me go over that again. Cytokines are the chemical messengers that influence which genes are turned on. Cartilage produces proteases, which are proteins that break down and remove old cartilage. but with increased oxidative damage and free radical production, it turns on the genes that overproduce the proteases that break down the cartilage. So we have to figure out how to turn off the genes that are turning on the proteases that break down the cartilage. Poor nutrition leads to the activation of the cartilage breakdown genes and the suppression of cartilage formation genes. In contrast, a healthy diet and the use of nutritional supplements that have been shown to support cartilage health can turn on genes that maintain the proper health of the cartilage. Nutritional supplements are an important adjunct to healthy diet and can be used to keep our joints healthy and to combat osteoarthritis. I will be discussing these in great detail in chapter 15 and 16, but some important ones include glucosamine, which they have a vegan version of, so I've just ordered that. Chondroitin, SAMe, which I've been hearing about forever for mood, but it's evidently good for joints. EPA and DHA, omega-3 fats found in fish oils, I don't eat fish, vitamin B, C, D, and E, alpha-lipoic acid, and coenzyme Q10. Cartilage is susceptible to damage from environmental toxins. As mentioned earlier, cartilage is a tissue that has poor blood supply. This prevents cartilage from healing well after injuries and also makes it unable to ward off disease or neutralize toxins that enter the joint. In the case of osteoarthritis, as the three-dimensional cartilage structure becomes fragmented and dysfunctional, it becomes even more difficult for the proper nutrients to reach the cells. A cartilage-destroying cycle is thus propagated by the joint. Interestingly, some of the most common drugs used to treat osteoarthritis, page 35, such as indocin and aspirin, have been found by researchers to significantly decrease the production of the 3D framework of cartilage known as the ECM, or the extracellular matrix. So get that? Aspirin breaks down the cartilage extracellular matrix. Please see chapter 12 for more in-depth discussion. Our clinical research study in which 105 patients with osteoarthritis of the hip were given either indocin, which I don't know that one, or another anti-inflammatory drug as a propazone, found that the indocin group showed a more rapid loss of joint space and had a lower concentration of the beneficial prostaglandins in their joint fluid that increased the blood flow and blood supply of the organ. Loss of joint space is an indication of worsening of the arthritis condition. The decrease of prostaglandins in the joint fluid, which are needed to allow for adequate blood flow to the joint, can inhibit nutrients and oxygen from getting to the joint bone and other joint structures, such as the nourishing and lubricating layer that covers the joints called the synovium. So the decrease of prostaglandins in the joint fluid can inhibit nutrients and oxygen from getting to the joint bone and other joint structures, such as the nourishing and lubricating layer that covers the joints called the synovium. Loss of joint, okay. What are the prostaglandins again? Can we go over that? Protease. Prostaglandins, which there are good and bad, but the unhealthy diets overproduce the increase. Okay, prostaglandins are the chemical compounds responsible for increasing inflammation. When they are formed excessively, they contribute to an unhealthy joint environment, which leads to cartilage breakdown. Okay. In another study, researchers showed that salicylates, the chemicals referred to as aspirin, accelerated cartilage destruction and damage in animals with osteoarthritis. Other researchers have shown that certain non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs exacerbate osteoarthritis by inhibiting prostaglandin synthesis. These studies seem to indicate that certain anti-inflammatory drugs accelerate the progression of osteoarthritis by reducing the manufacturing of important chemicals that increase the blood flow to joints. Presumably, the prostaglandins blocked are those responsible for allowing adequate nutrients and oxygen to reach the joint. So get this, all the medications you've been taking for joint pain are reducing the flow of nutrients to your joints. So you're hurting your joints. You're committing jointicide. Okay, don't say that. It sounds silly. Okay, as stated previously, the joint cartilage sits on the bone much like the snow cap that cover mountain peaks. The ends of the two long bones that form a joint are called subchondral bone. For example, in the case of the knee, it is formed by the thigh bone called the femur and the shin bone called the tibia. The end of each bone is capped by a thick layer of joint cartilage. The subchondral bone also plays an important role in the development of osteoarthritis. Early in the course of the disease, subchondral bone thickens and shows increased chemical activity. In the later stage, or shall we say latter, in the later stages of the disease, the bone actually starts to fragment as its fibers become narrower and weaker. As bone weakens, it starts to deform. This is the reason people with knee arthritis develop bow legs or knock knees as the disease becomes more advanced. I did not know that until just a moment ago. So this is the end of chapter 1, and then he puts conclusions. So we're going to go through the bullet points. 1. Osteoarthritis is fueled by the turning on of genes that lead to cartilage damage and breakdown. 2. Poor diets high in sugar and fat, low in vitamins and minerals, cause increased inflammation by increasing production of unhealthy prostaglandins and rusting within the cartilage. 3. This poor nutrition changes the behavior and expression of important cartilage genes. 4. Cartilage destructive genes are turned on, leading to the production of inflammatory prostaglandins that lead to cartilage breakdown and osteoarthritis. 5. Poor nutrition and obesity leads to increasing rusting in the cartilage cells, which damages the cartilage. This is similar to the way metal rusts when exposed to water and oxygen for a long period of time. I see why he uses that metaphor. That's great. Okay, in obese individuals, fat cells become chemical time bombs. These fat cells produce inflammatory substances and destructive chemical messengers that turn on genes that lead to cartilage breakdown. This is why maintaining a healthy weight is important in preventing degenerative diseases such as osteoarthritis. Oh, great. What is insulin resistance? Chapter 2, page 37. Okay. The modern American diet, causes of insulin resistance. The modern American diet is filled with junk food, sodas, pasta, breads, and empty calorie foods. When we eat such a diet, our blood sugar becomes chronically elevated. Our bodies try to clear the sugar from the blood by picking it up and storing it in organs such as the muscles and the liver. The hormone the body uses to do this is called insulin, which is produced in the pancreas, a small but important organ that is positioned behind the stomach. In diabetes, a condition that has, reached epidemic proportions in the United States, the pancreas does not produce enough insulin to process sugars, so diabetics must take insulin shots. If they do not take their insulin shots, sugar accumulates in the bloodstream. The presence of high levels of sugar in the blood is toxic to the body. It leads to many of the diseases seen in diabetic patients, such as nerve damage, which can lead to amputation, blindness, kidney failure, and heart failure. Why is increased blood sugar so harmful to our bodies? It is because increased blood sugar leads to the formation of sugar-coated proteins called advanced glycation end products, which are abbreviated ACEs. When blood sugar accumulates in the blood as a result of excessive consumption of sugary foods and drinks, the body must produce increasing amounts of insulin to get rid of the sugar load. The problem is that the pancreas produces more insulin. Two bad things happen. The first is that the organs, which respond to insulin by removing sugar from the bloodstream, become unable to respond to the increasing amounts of insulin in the body, a condition known as insulin resistance. The second is the pancreas eventually gets burned out and stops producing insulin altogether. This is when type 2 diabetes develops. The occurrence of type 2 diabetes has reached epidemic levels in this country, and many experts believe that up to 1/4 of all children born in the year 2000 will eventually develop the disease if the current trends of poor nutrition and obesity continue. A related problem is that someone who eats too many sugary foods feels hungry all the time. This is because both insulin and leptin, another important hormone I will discuss in chapter 10, are necessary to turn off our hunger switch in the brain. Insulin resistance has detrimental effects on the fat-produced hormone leptin, leading to the development of leptin resistance. Leptin is produced by fat cells. Obese people who have insulin resistance have organs that are not listening to the signals of insulin, i.e., they are resistant to its effects. They have high blood sugar and also high insulin levels. Insulin resistance is thus referred to as prediabetes, as it predisposes to the development of diabetes. It also leads to increased leptin production by fat cells and also leptin resistance. Excessive levels of these two hormones are important factors in the development of cartilage breakdown in the joints and subsequent development of osteoarthritis. The result is that people who eat high sugar diets, also referred to as high carbohydrate diet, constantly feel hungry, even though they have consumed more than enough calories. This eventually leads them to become overweight or obese. The symptoms of insulin resistance include sugar cravings, fatigue, increased fat around the waist, high blood pressure, and feeling tired after eating a meal high in sugar. What is insulin resistance? Page 39. Figure 2.1. How do we know we are insulin resistant? We crave sweets constantly. We have a large waist, greater than 40 inches circumference in men and greater than 35 inches in women. We are tired after eating a heavy carbohydrate meal. We have low energy levels throughout the day. We have tiredness and low energy that is improved after eating a sugary snack or a soft drink. The chronic eating of high sugar foods causes fat cells to become insulin resistant. When blood sugar levels become chronically elevated, fat cells start working against the body. They become deaf to insulin's messages, leading to the release of increased fat in the bloodstream, which increases blood cholesterol. This is because insulin-resistant fat cells do not function normally. They cannot process and store fat properly, which leads to increased blood cholesterol and triglycerides. The increased blood fat is also toxic to many organs, and insulin-resistant fat cells generate inflammatory cytokines, or inflammatory messengers, and release them into the bloodstream, increasing the overall inflammatory status of the body. Increased inflammation is the result of the production of inflammatory substances such as interleukin-1, IL-1, and bad prostaglandins. These cause damage in our joints by triggering genes in cartilage cells that cause production of cartilage-degrading substances, and also by triggering suicide genes, in quotation marks. For a more detailed discussion, see Chapter 8. The two important inflammatory cytokines involved in cartilage breakdown are interleukin-6, IL-6, and TNF-alpha. Thus, eating a high-sugar diet not only causes weight gain, it also causes fat cells to become activated to produce inflammatory substances. The inflamed fat cells found in obese people release inflammatory fat hormones that have been shown to have detrimental effects on our cartilage. This is the metabolic connection between obesity and osteoarthritis. The two important fat cell hormones I will be discussing are leptin and adiponectin. When one consumes an unhealthy diet and becomes overweight, the body produces increased amounts of leptin and decreased amounts of adiponectin. As I will discuss in Chapter 10, both leptin and adiponectin are involved in cartilage destruction. The principle here is that hormonal imbalances produced by being overweight and having an unhealthy and inflammatory diet have detrimental effects on the body's organs, including the joints. How elevated blood sugar leads to cartilage breakdown. When the liver and muscle cells are exposed to high circulating levels of blood sugar, they become insulin resistant and cannot absorb the sugar and clear it from the blood. This elevated blood sugar causes many proteins and fats in the blood to become oxidized, in parentheses, rancid, and sugar-coated. The result of poor nutrition is the development of toxic and acidic advanced glycation end products. When advanced glycation end products, AGEs, accumulate in the bloodstream, they produce a number of detrimental effects. First, they cause increased inflammation by stimulating genes in cartilage cells to produce oxygen-free radicals, TNF-alpha, and IL-6. And those are the inflammatory cytokines involved in cartilage breakdown. The IL-6 and the TNF-alpha, the interleukin-6 and TNF-alpha. As discussed above, the latter two are chemical messengers that increase inflammation within cartilage, leading to its destruction. AGEs are also deposited in the cartilage by binding to collagen. Oh, wow. So you're trying to bind a bunch of advanced glycation end products, which are proteins bound to sugar, like proteins and fats. Okay. When AGEs bind to collagen, the three-dimensional backbone of cartilage, they weaken it, making it more prone to breaking down. AGEs are thus an important cause of osteoarthritic cartilage damage, and it is important to eat a diet low in refined sugar and sugar-generating carbohydrates, such as pastas, white bread, and other desserts, in order to prevent their occurrence. Okay. The RAGE receptor on cartilage cells binds to advanced glycation end products. Recent research has shown that AGEs, advanced glycation end products, cause damage to cartilage by interacting with special chemicals called RAGE receptors, which are found on the cartilage cell membrane. And I'm thinking that's receptor of an advanced glycation end product. Which are found on the cartilage cell membrane. A receptor binds to a specific substance, usually a protein located on the outside of a cell in a lock and key fashion. When the circulating substance on the outside of the cell, in this case the sugar-coated proteins known as AGEs, bind to the cell receptor, in this case RAGE, this causes a whole series of detrimental chemical reactions to occur that send the cartilage cell on the path of cell destruction. The RAGE receptors transmit a signal across the cell membrane into the nucleus, where the DNA is stored. This activates genes that produce chemicals in the cell that lead to the cartilage breakdown and the development of osteoarthritis. The fascinating thing is that the RAGE receptors are normally found on cartilage cells, but high sugar intake causes these receptors to become overproduced and stimulated to create toxic effects by turning on genes that destroy cartilage. I've already noted that poor insulin function occurs as a result of unhealthy high sugar diets. We can maintain proper insulin function in our bodies by eating a low sugar, low refined carbohydrate diet. This means limiting our consumption of foods like pasta, bread, and sweets. Eating a diet rich in omega-3 fatty acids found in cold water fish such as mackerel, which I don't eat fish, gross, sardines and salmon, as well as flax, improves insulin sensitivity and lowers blood sugar levels. Experiments with insulin-resistant rats have shown that fish oil, with its high content of omega-3 fats, reversed insulin resistance in these animals. Proper insulin function can be aided by aerobic exercise and by strength and resistance training exercises. Taking the nutritional supplement chromium picolinate, taken for years now, can also help regulate and maintain proper insulin levels. This is because chromium picolinate works with insulin to lower sugar levels in the blood, and it's also in cinnamon. Okay. Research has shown that when people who are insulin resistant are given this supplement, their insulin levels are lowered, blood sugar is lowered, cells become more sensitive to the effects of insulin, and also their cholesterol is lowered. Thus, chromium picolinate is useful in preventing and treating insulin resistance. Why is insulin resistance so dangerous? Insulin resistance increases oxidative stress, increases inflammation in the body, leads to obesity and metabolic syndrome, leads to the production of many inflammatory chemicals by the fat in our oversized waists, leads to hormonal imbalance. Insulin resistance promotes weight gain and eventual obesity and leads to increased inflammation in the body. Chronic high intake of sugars leads to obesity. This may seem paradoxical, but foods high in sugar build more fat in the body than foods high in fat. The type of fat one has, for example, around the waist, is important in determining how much insulin resistance will develop and ultimately how inflamed the body becomes. The more insulin resistance someone has, the more likely they are to progress to frank type 2 diabetes. The more inflammation present in the body, the higher the likelihood of developing chronic degenerative diseases such as osteoarthritis. People with more upper body fat around their waists, which is more common in men, are called apple-shaped and are more prone to insulin resistance than those who are pear-shaped, most often women with more body fat around the hips and thighs. We already know that obesity is bad for our health. The main reason for this is that obesity causes increased inflammation and subsequent illness in the body. Fat around the waist is more inflammatory and worse for our health than fat around our thighs. This is because fat cells in the belly fat have been shown to produce more of the harmful chemical mediators such as IL-1. What is IL-1? Does anybody remember? Interleukin-1. Inflammatory substance. Okay, that damaged the joints. Okay. And bad prostaglandins than fat in the thighs. Okay, so belly fat is more dangerous than thigh fat. Inflammation in the body can be measured by simple blood tests given in a doctor's office. Two such important blood tests are the measurements of two proteins in our blood called C-reactive protein, CRP, and homocysteine. Homocysteine has received a lot of attention recently because it has been shown to be as important as, or even more so than, cholesterol levels in predicting whether we will develop a heart attack. This is because heart disease is felt to be more than just related by elevated blood cholesterol levels attacking the heart vessel walls and causing blockages, atherosclerosis. It is felt that inflammation signaled by elevated homocysteine levels present in the blood vessel cholesterol deposits is the real culprit in triggering heart attacks. When C-reactive protein is greater than 1.0 and homocysteine is greater than 8.0, this is highly indicative of a dangerous level of inflammation in the body. These high levels predispose us to the development of diseases. Inflammation is beneficial to the body by producing inflammatory chemicals at the site of an injury, such as a cut in the skin or a broken bone. The body is able to heal. Okay? Let's go back over that. When C-reactive protein is greater than 1.0 and homocysteine is greater than 8.0, this is highly indicative of a dangerous level of inflammation in the body. These high levels predispose us to the development of disease. Inflammation is beneficial to the body. By producing inflammatory chemicals at the site of an injury, such as a cut in the skin or a broken bone, the body is able to heal. It is when inflammation is not associated with any injury or infection, thus we do not know we even have it, and it is also excessive and of a long duration, that it leads to disease in the body. For instance, it is known that people who do not properly brush their teeth and do not floss develop chronic inflammatory disease of the gums known as periodontal disease. Pockets of bacteria accumulate in the gums that produce inflammatory chemicals that are related in the body. Chronic periodontal disease not only leads to tooth decay, but is also linked to the development of heart disease. This is due to the chronic, often silent until advanced stages, inflammation it causes. Nutritional habits play a major role in determining the inflammatory status in the body. A diet rich in healthful and colorful vegetables, high in antioxidants, low in sugar intake, and high in the intake of omega-3 fats goes a long way in decreasing the inflammatory status of the body and in warding off the development of degenerative diseases. Conclusions. Insulin resistance, a major cause of disease in the United States, is caused by obesity and the high sugar levels found in the standard American diet. Fat cells, especially the ones around the waist, are very sensitive to the effects of insulin resistance, producing inflammatory chemicals and inflammatory hormones that cause the destruction of cartilage in the joints. High blood sugar levels stimulate the production of toxic chemicals called AGEs. Once formed, AGEs, advanced glycation endpoints, have many detrimental effects on our organs. They activate RAGE receptors on cartilage cells to start the cycle of cartilage breakdown and osteoarthritis development. The activation of RAGE receptors has been implicated in a number of degenerative conditions, including Alzheimer's disease and the development of hardening of our blood vessels called atherosclerosis. This leads to stroke and heart disease. RAGE receptor activation is an important factor in the development and progression of osteoarthritis. Insulin-resistant people tend to become overweight and eventually obese. Being overweight and being insulin-resistant means that one has increased inflammation in the body. It also means that the cells rust and malfunction, causing disease. There is hope, though. Insulin resistance can be corrected through proper diet, which leads to a natural loss of excess pounds. Maintaining a healthy weight can prevent the degeneration of our organs. Okay. Wow. So I was midway in chapter 3 and I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta read this to YouTube. This is so good. So important. So, what is oxidative stress? Page 47. Where should we begin? We began on 27. Okay. So what is oxidative stress? We know that daily life with all its responsibilities and obstacles creates stress. Life is stressful. Stress occurs in the body in a number of ways, such as psychological stress when our job is threatened or our kids are not doing well in school, and physical stress from illness or injury. Here I want to concentrate on a special kind of stress called oxidative stress. Oxidation refers to the chemical process in the body in which a compound combines with oxygen. This leads to rusting, similar to what happens when a metal combines with oxygen. This damaging rust inside the cells is referred to as oxidative stress. Oxidative stress occurs in our bodies when we consume unhealthy foods containing partially hydrogenated oils, refined sugars, white flour, and pasteurized juices. Besides the formation of rust, consumption of these types of foods increases the acidity in the body and leads to metabolic acidosis. Acidity is measured in the body using the pH scale. A pH level lower than 7 is acidic, while a pH level greater than 7 is alkaline. A level of 7 is neutral and is neither acidic nor alkaline. The pH level of our blood is tightly regulated to be about 7.4. The body functions better if the blood is alkaline rather than acidic. Diet is very important in determining the pH of the body. An unhealthy diet high in synthetic fats, sugars, and artificial ingredients leads to an overall acidic pH. A diet high in fruits, vegetables, and healthy omega-3 fats leads to an overall alkaline pH. The consumption of unhealthy foods has reached record high levels in the United States over the last 20 years. When the body has an overall acidic pH, this inhibits its self-repair processes and leads to increased oxidative stress. This leads to the breakdown of cartilage, similar to the way a piece of plastic dissolves in hydrochloric acid. Whoa. Nitric oxide's role in osteoarthritis. Oxidative stress leads to the formation of free radicals in the cells. Free radicals are unstable compounds that are highly reactive and damage the chemical machinery of the cell. An important free radical involved in the development of osteoarthritis is nitric oxide. It is produced by the action of an enzyme called INOS. A useful analogy in understanding how nitric oxide is harmful is to think of it as similar to static interfering with the transmission of a radio signal. The static distorts the sound and makes the words unintelligible. Cells are the basic chemical factories in the body. Cells communicate with their outside environment through chemical messengers called proteins. Proteins in cells transmit signals that come to the cell from its outside environment and communicate them to the cell's command center, the nucleus. There, these signals activate genes in the DNA that tell the cell how to behave and what substances to manufacture. It is on this transmission of information that nitric oxide exerts its harmful effects. By changing the chemical structure of proteins, it alters the signals in the cell and leads to the creation of static in the form of harmful chemicals called cytokines. Nitric oxide is actively involved in damaging cartilage cells in osteoarthritis. Together with other free radicals produced by oxidative stress, it activates genes that produce chemicals that deteriorate the joints, such as cartilage breakdown enzyme MMP13. Osteoarthritis is the breakdown of cartilage in the joints. This breakdown is fueled by our unbalanced and unhealthy diets. Unhealthy diet creates rust in our cartilage cells, causing them to malfunction and resulting in an acidic pH, which breaks down the cartilage. The cartilage breakdown occurs because this unhealthy environment turns on the wrong kinds of genes in cartilage cells, which overproduce the cartilage degrading enzymes, as well as the suicide genes that lead to cell death. Research has shown that when human cartilage cells are placed in an environment of increased oxidative stress, they become dysfunctional. These cells start overproducing degrading proteases that break down cartilage. They produce increased numbers of free radicals, energy production by their mitochondria becomes sluggish, and they exhibit damage to their DNA. The DNA damage is at the heart of the development of the degenerative diseases that are so rampant today. When DNA is damaged, the individual genes that form it are not properly expressed. Some are turned off while others are stimulated to overproduce certain proteins. In osteoarthritis, specific genes called suicide genes are stimulated to produce proteins that lead to cartilage cell death. As the cartilage cells begin to die, they cannot maintain the tissue's three-dimensional structure, so the cartilage framework starts to unravel. Free radicals. In the cells, food absorbed from the bloodstream is converted to energy in the form of ATP. This process is performed by the mitochondria, the engines that drive the cells. In the process of using the energy created by the cell, they create toxic emissions in the form free radicals. This toxic exhaust is harmful for the cell and must be disposed by detoxification enzyme systems in the cell. If it is allowed to accumulate, the inside of the cell might look like the Los Angeles skyline on a smoggy day. When nutrition is lacking in the appropriate vitamins and minerals, the detox system malfunctions and free radicals accumulate in the joints. The result is cartilage breakdown and the development of osteoarthritis. The culprits involved in joint damage: inflammatory cytokines, free radicals, deterioration of joint cartilage. And you can see this cute little diagram. Okay. So if you think of the inflammatory cytokines as inflammatory messengers. Wow. Okay. Vitamins and minerals are important because they act as helpers for the detox enzymes that take in free radicals and turn them into harmless substances. Vitamins and minerals help to clean out the sludge that accumulates in the cells. They help burn energy more efficiently, resulting in the production of less smog. Individuals have a different susceptibility to oxidative damage based on their genetic makeup. This is because of small differences in the makeup of genes called single nucleotide polymorphisms. Diet interacts with genetic makeup in the form of SNPs present in key genes that code for inflammatory substances to activate the genes that overproduce inflammatory and oxidizing agents in cells of susceptible individuals. The lesson here is that a healthy diet keeps the correct types of genes, those that promote joint health, turned on, while the wrong diet leads to the activation of genes that lead to inflammation and rust, in quotation marks, inside cells, and eventually cartilage cell death. This is why good food is good medicine. Okay, recap on vocabulary. This is really helpful. Thank you. Thank you, Peter Bales. You're awesome. I'm going to look him up and see if he's still around. Oxidative stress, internal body stress causing damage to our cells. Metabolic acidosis, high levels of acidity in the body. Free radical, a highly reactive compound that steals electrons from other compounds and damages our cells. Nitric oxide, a toxic agent to articular cartilage. Proteins, messengers in the cells that communicate signals between the cell and outside environment. Nucleus, the cell's command center. Cytokines, chemical messengers that transmit signals to our cells. ILF and TNF alpha are well-known ones. Cytokines, okay. Mitochondria, chemical factories in cells that convert the food we eat to energy in the form of ATP. Detoxification enzyme systems. They normally clean up the toxic buildup inside cells. They malfunction when our diet is poor. This allows free radicals to accumulate and cause cartilage damage in our joints. Okay. Yeah, you don't want free radicals in your joints. Okay, cool. SNP. Small genetic variations between people that predispose certain susceptible people to increased oxidative damage. Conclusions. Increased oxidative stress and an acidic state in the body cause joint cartilage to break down, leading to the development of osteoarthritis. Nitric oxide is an important free radical involved in damaging cartilage cells and osteoarthritis. Oxidative damage to the joints is an important mechanism for the development of osteoarthritis. Okay, so that's how much we've read into, I think, 3 successive YouTubes. Nobody showed up for this one. That's okay, because I think it says we're live, 52 minutes, wow. But I feel like, okay, that was the introduction. Yeah, we read the introduction too, that's true. Starting on page 11. And then I feel like I want to tell you about the preface. Okay. Yeah, it's a very short preface. I'm going to read it just to kind of wrap this one up. I might stop, I'm not sure. So the preface, going back, so we've made it to page 52. Now we're going back to page 7 for this short little preface. Peter Bales writes, "My motivation for writing this book is based on the fact that a large number of scientific discoveries are occurring daily, but they are slow to be implemented in the daily practice of medicine. A lot of this information is dispersed among different specialities and medical disciplines, but it has not been integrated by organized medicine to the point where it can benefit actual patients. Furthermore, physicians who are at the front lines in treating people with osteoarthritis do not have knowledge of many of the latest discoveries. As a result, many people will not be made aware of this information by consulting their physicians. Another factor complicating this matter is that medicine, as it is currently practiced, is focused on drug treatments and invasive and surgical procedures. The research I will outline in this book focuses on a more holistic approach to treating and preventing osteoarthritis. There is a lack of incorporation of new medical knowledge and treatments into the everyday treatments of patients with osteoarthritis. This information gap in the treatment of osteoarthritis leads to arthritis sufferers to seek alternative and complementary medicine more than any other group of patients with degenerative disease. The research presented in this book has been performed at the most prestigious universities and medical institutions around the world, but these findings have not, for the most part, been incorporated by traditional medical practitioners in the treatment of their patients. It is this knowledge gap that my book aims to fill. After all, knowledge is power. I was trained at traditional medical universities and am a practicing board-certified orthopedic surgeon. The inspiration to write this book came from the growing epidemic of osteoarthritis plaguing younger people, which I encounter on a daily basis in my practice. In the past, osteoarthritis was typically associated with the elderly. However, more recently, it is plaguing people starting in their 30s. Why? The answer lies in part to our highly inflammatory diet, consisting in part of our overwhelming consumption of sugar and unhealthy fats. This type of diet has detrimental effects on our health. This book explains how we can turn on and off genes in our joints to avoid this crippling disease. Traditional medicine has a limited number of treatments for osteoarthritis. These include anti-inflammatory medications, which can cause serious side effects, addicting painkillers, and drastic total joint replacement surgery. This book's mission is to provide knowledge and insight on new alternative means to treat osteoarthritis without medications or surgery. My extensive research has shown that many recent scientific studies support my theory. These new genetic and nutritional studies are destined to revolutionize the treatment of osteoarthritis. The new genetic research shows that the same poor nutrition that causes inflammation, obesity, diabetes, and heart disease is also fueling the development of joint deterioration. Osteoarthritis affects more than 20 million Americans and is the most common degenerative disorder in the United States. The recent explosion of conditions such as obesity, metabolic syndrome, and diabetes is fueling the increase in joint deterioration and osteoarthritis. The culprit, elevated blood sugar levels created by insulin resistance and unhealthy fat consumption, which increase the inflammatory state of our bodies and turn on genes that promote the breakdown of cartilage in our joints. Metabolic syndrome, which is associated with obesity, high cholesterol levels, and high blood sugar levels, is estimated to affect 47 million Americans. Unless the current trends are reversed, according to some estimates, 1 out of 4 children born in the year 2000 is destined to develop diabetes. These metabolic trends are causing an increase in osteoarthritis and other degenerative diseases in the United States, and if left unchecked, will bankrupt our ailing healthcare system. This book is divided into 6 parts. In part 1, I discuss the impact of osteoarthritis on society and how osteoarthritis leads to cartilage destruction in joints. I then discuss the interrelated metabolic conditions that predispose us to the development of osteoarthritis. These include insulin resistance, prediabetes, oxidative stress, decaying process inflammation, metabolic syndrome, and obesity. Part 2 outlines the latest research in nutrition and arthritis, which shows how these predisposing metabolic imbalances lead to the development of osteoarthritis. In Chapter 9, I discuss the beneficial effects of the good fats and omega-3s on our joints. In Chapter 10, I discuss how hormonal imbalances caused by obesity and unhealthy diets increases inflammation in joint cartilage. In Chapter 11, I discuss how increased sugar in our diet leads to the increasing rusting of our joints. In Chapter 12, I discuss specific side effects of current osteoarthritis drugs and also the potential pitfalls of new drugs that are in the pipeline. In Part 3, I discuss the joint nutrients that have been shown by the latest research to be the most beneficial in combating osteoarthritis. In Chapter 13, I discuss how new genetic research is unraveling many chemical substances involved in the development of osteoarthritis. In Chapter 14, I discuss a number of beneficial nutrients and vitamins that emerging research has shown to be beneficial to people with osteoarthritis. In chapter 15, I discuss in more detail a comprehensive nutritional arsenal that can be used to combat osteoarthritis. I also discuss two well-known nutraceuticals, glucosamine and chondroitin, and I detail a number of international scientific studies that support their use in pain control and halting the progression of osteoarthritis. Part 4 outlines my dietary recommendations for osteoarthritis based on the most current genetic and nutritional research. These include maintaining an optimal weight of BMI less than 25, maintaining low blood sugar levels, increasing the amount of omega-3 fats consumed in the diet, and using nutritional supplements. Part 5, I discuss how new basic science research findings support the emergence of a new paradigm in treating degenerative diseases such as osteoarthritis. I discuss the reason why the old paradigm of using such drugs as painkillers, anti-inflammatories, and steroids is not working to prevent and treat osteoarthritis. Finally, in part 6, I look to the future discussing the emerging research fields of nutritional genetics, proteomics, the study of the interaction of proteins with nutrients, and metabolomics, the study of how nutrients improve our metabolism, which will improve our treatments and lead to a cure of osteoarthritis. We are a knowledge-based society. Scientific knowledge doubles every 3 to 5 years. No one person or scientific discipline is the repository of the holy grail of knowledge of diseases. People must access information from a variety of sources and be able to synthesize this information to make the best decisions for their health and that of their families. It is in this spirit that I write this book, and I hope it provides a fresh approach to attack this crippling disease. So this is published by Prometheus Books, Amherst, New York, 2008. Oh, yes, and even this is probably, according to this ancient 2008 copyright, it is probably illegal to read it on the internet. Okay, well, I wasn't trying to read a copyright notice. I'm trying to help people get this information that is deprived of them unfairly. Okay, so I guess we're going to stop here at excess information is a setup for disease in the joints. The chapter 12 that I've been skipping around a bunch. There's a glossary that's so good. Elevated homocysteine can result from low B complex vitamin intake and predisposes individuals to heart disease. But the higher homocysteine, when elevated in the blood, indicates increased inflammation of the body. So everybody, you need to get on Bs. You have to take B vitamins, and you're depleted if you drink alcohol. You're depleted if you eat standard American SAD diet. Okay, so our healthcare system is in crisis. It sure is, I'm sure. Okay. Okay, he's got his opinions. He says our healthcare system is in crisis. Dietary recommendation. I even thought of writing this down so I can just really burn it into my brain. Alcar is a... what is this? Oh, alpha lipoic acid. Isn't that in coconut oil? Okay. Catechins from green tea, when added to osteoarthritic cartilage cells, stop the breakdown of cartilage. I love it. I've been so into green tea lately. This is wonderful. Okay, I'm glad that's okay, because I was scared somebody was going to say you can't drink green tea. And I know maybe caffeine is bad. Niacinamide, which is, I think, B6, is really important in the breakdown of homocysteine, beneficial joints, new genetic research, drugs that target INOS. So basically, I want to have sugar-coated proteins in osteoarthritis and healthy diets. Oh yeah, it's chapter 12 I'm looking for, because that's the one where he really gets into the whole drug scene. But I read the most amazing stuff about nutraceutical. Okay, this is great, but where's the chapter? Okay, that's 15. So we're going to go back to, so drugs. Okay. Okay, I'm going to jump ahead to page 128 and read you a little bit. An example, let's see. Okay, this is page 128. Why are anti-inflammatory drugs dangerous to cartilage in our joints? The interest in using nutritional methods to combat osteoarthritis is born out of physicians' and patients' experience with the widely used nonsteroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. Nonsteroidals currently play a major role in the treatment of osteoarthritis. They act by blocking the arachidonic acid pathway and thus decreasing the synthesis of inflammatory prostaglandins. This approach is associated with unwanted side effects because prostaglandins are involved in complex pathways that have positive as well as negative effects on joint cartilage and other organs. While the short-term use of these drugs is appropriate and has beneficial effects by decreasing the pain and inflammation associated with osteoarthritis, they have never been proven in scientific research studies to have any disease-modifying benefits. Aspirin is widely used for pain relief in osteoarthritic patients. Aspirin inhibits the enzymes involved in the early stages of cartilage manufacturing. This is a drawback to aspirin use. Several nonsteroidal anti-inflammatories also suppress the synthesis of the proteoglycans that make up the cartilage backbone. Proteoglycans. The depletion of these important cartilage subunits is a major reason nonsteroidals can be toxic to the already damaged joint cartilage found in patients with osteoarthritis. In one scientific study, researchers studied 13 different nonsteroidal drugs available in the market for use with osteoarthritis and compared their effects on cartilage cells. Arthritic cartilage is more prone than normal cartilage to damage from nonsteroidals because diseased cartilage cells do not function well and accumulate the drug, amplifying side effects. Please refer back to the discussion. So basically, the drugs they're giving you for your arthritis are killing your joints. And we'll get to that when we get to page 129. And this is page 53. Are we cool? Okay, bye.